Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Hopefully we'll have a few more people join in, but I thought we would get started. Welcome to this Send It School webinar on measuring the success of your email campaigns. I am Sarah and I'm the International Marketing Manager for SparkPost, and it's great to have you all here. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. If you've got any questions throughout the webinar, then feel free to pop them in the questions tab in the control panel, and we will come to those at the end of the webinar. Any questions we don't have time for, we'll reach out direct with an answer, and we'll also send out a follow-up recording in the coming days, so do look out for that as well. So for those of you who don't know who SparkPost are, I thought it would be good to give a brief overview. So we're the industry's most trusted email sending, deliverability and email production platform. We help some of the largest brands across the world reliably reach the inbox and offer some really powerful solutions to help them plan, execute and optimize email programs. Taxi for Email is also a platform as part of SparkPost, helping email marketers to reduce their email production time and get emails out the door much quicker. If you're interested in hearing any more about what we do and how we can help, feel free to reach out to us on our website or reach out to myself or any of the panelists. A year ago, actually, we became part of MessageBird. I can't believe it's quite a year ago, but it's flown by. And MessageBird is a cloud communications platform that empowers consumers to communicate with businesses in the same way they communicate with friends, so really seamless communication across multiple channels. And so briefly, what's on the agenda for today? So we have Kieran and Tracy, our panelists, and they'll be talking about email metrics, what to measure, what not to measure, and some tips on that, and also how to create a positive email experience and keeping email recipients happy and optimizing your email programs. So just briefly then about our awesome panelists, we've got Kieran, who is our Director of Technical Account Manager of the Technical Account Management team for the EMEA region. He's got years of email experience and is really a true expert. He leads our team across the region and helps to serve our customers to optimize their email programs. And then there's Tracy Crawford, who's been in the email industry for over 10 years. Her experience is more on the technical side, managing MTA servers and working with customers on compliance and deliverability to optimize their email programs. So enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Kieran and Tracy, and they're going to get started, and I will jump in at the very end of the webinar to see what questions we have. Over to you guys.
Great, thanks very much, Sarah. So I want to start looking at what you might want to measure where in the email process. One of the things about emails is that it's incredibly generating a lot of data everywhere in this funnel, from the very beginning where you're talking about the building your list right through to the end when your customers, your recipients, are doing the things that you want to send the email to. And it is very rich in data, but working out what data to look at, what data to ignore, what data to concentrate on, that kind of stuff is really important. If we see this as a funnel, you can see we start off with subscribers, then we're looking at delivery measurements, so you know what the mechanics of the email, engagement, what happens, what the users do, various hygiene measures like spam complaints and spam traps and block lists. Is the mail going into the inbox? Are we tracking the click-through? What happens after the click-through on the website? What else do recipients do on the website? And then where do they end up? Do they purchase? Do they do the action that you wanted them to do? And each of those places, there's different metrics that you can track. So I want to look at all of these sections. Tracy and I will look at all of these sections in turn.
So let's look at the subscribers for starters. This is going to be your target audience. Subscribers need to know what they're signing up for and why. If it's not clear, they may not recognize your email and may simply delete it. When someone signs up for content via a web form, they are opting in. When someone attends a webinar, a conference, makes a purchase, or performs some other action, it would be a sign up. And you should make it clear to the person that they will receive email from you. Without their acknowledgement, they may not want your content, and then you're at risk of getting spam complaints or unsubscribes. When a customer signs up, don't require them to fill out a lot of information, as this may deter them. Gradually gather more details in a way that makes it beneficial for them to give their information. For example, you may want to say, give us the date of your birthday and we'll send you a special coupon. Make sure the unsubscribe link is working and clearly visible. You'll always get subscribers that unsubscribe, but this is a great indicator of customer interest. Unsubscribes can be due to stale content, improper list segmentation, and over communication. So pay attention to this metric. And finally, monitor and analyze your subscriber list. This will help you determine whether your sign-up methods are working and will highlight areas of improvement. So let's look at the next level of the funnel, which is delivery. You'll start looking at delivery metrics such as how many emails were suppressed due to the customer unsubscribing or complaining, how many emails were delivered or bounced. Digging further into the bounces, you'll want to look at how many of your addresses were invalid and therefore hard bounced. Which emails were blocked by mailbox providers and why? How many emails soft bounce? An example of a soft bounce is mailbox full or over quota. Continual monitoring of these metrics over time can help you determine where you can make improvements, whether it be in your method of obtaining subscribers, your list cleaning process, or improving the content of your email. So if you look at the bounce rates, you can see that if you sit between a 2 to 3% bounce rate, you're in good shape and you're a good sender. If you're over that and around 5%, you're going to want to look at your acquisition practices, your content, different aspects of your mailing, because you're probably in need of remediation. If you're sitting at 10% or more of a bounce rate, you've got some major issues and you'll need to take action quickly. So this screen shows a sample of the SparkPost analytics. At the top, you can see the graph shows the number of emails that were targeted and accepted. You can see the hard, soft, and block bounce rates. At the bottom, looking at 1 week of data broken down by mailbox provider, you can see a really good clean list. There are still some hard bounces and a few elevated soft bounces, which are probably mailbox full or over quota. Kieran's going to talk to you about engagement now.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, so you want to be able to, email systems for forever have enabled you to track opens in inverted commas. And I use inverted commas because it's not a particularly reliable metric. It uses a little pixel, an invisible graphic that gets put into the HTML so that when the HTML is rendered, that graphic is called, the URL uniquely identifies the recipient of that campaign, and your email systems server will recognize that the HTML has been rendered, and that counts as an open. Now, there are a lot of associated problems with this. It relies on images being enabled. And so bizarrely, sometimes if people have well-designed email that degrades gracefully so that it works without images, people may not actually turn images on because they're getting enough information from your email anyway, but you'll end up not recording an open for them. Or Gmail, for instance, if you have a long email with lots of content or lots of URLs in, the bottom of that email may not render. And if your open pixel is at the bottom, that the HTML may not render, and so you won't capture that. And that's one of the reasons why SparkPost puts a pixel at the top and the bottom, so we can get more of an indication as to whether that HTML is being rendered. It's always important to count unique opens rather than the total number of opens. We find that customers these days are often opening 2 or 3 times a message. Maybe it's because they're looking on a different device, or they're scrolling through their emails and the HTML is rendered as they scroll through. But what you really want to know is, did somebody open it at least once? And you also, because of the problems with images, you want to make sure that you include any times where you've seen a click but not an open, because you can reasonably conclude that somebody can't click on a link without having opened the email, so you can count those things in. I find it's a really useful relative measure. So if I see a 10% open rate, that doesn't mean, oh wow, 90% of the people who I sent to haven't opened the email. It means that there's some built-in error, but it's more useful to know that if it's 10% this week but 5% next week, I know there's something that I need to investigate. You know, maybe some blocking, that some spam foldering, or some problem with the content, or a change in the subject line. So looking at the trends over time, relative trends over time, is more important than looking at the absolute measure. Now, click tracking is likely to be more accurate because ESPs like SparkPost do it by replacing the URL that you want the user to go to with a URL that goes to the email service provider system. And then the user clicks on that, it records the fact that they've been there, and then it redirects them to where you wanted them to go to. So they can't get to the destination URL without coming through the email service provider system. So you're more likely to be able to track the open properly. But as we'll talk about later, it's not the last thing that you should measure, because there are more things that should happen after the click that we want to look at. One of the challenges with opens and clicks is what is kind of automated engagement, or what some people have been talking about, non-human interactions. One of the main ones of those is the Apple Mail Privacy Protection software, which was launched with iOS 15 last year. It has a real user benefit. The Apple devices, all Apple devices, iPhones, iPads, new Macs, they pre-fetch the images into a cache on the device in preparation for an email being read. So if you've got an email that's got lots of images in it and you decide to read it, it's great if all the images are there straight away, rather than you having to wait whilst the images download, particularly if you're on a slow connection now, but you were plugged in and on Wi-Fi earlier. But the problem with that prefetching is that that also includes the open pixel. So the open pixel is being requested and therefore recorded, even though the recipient might not actually go on to open that message. And so this is definitely one of the problems that with open rates that have come up recently, and it's causing lots of people a lot of hard thinking about whether open rates are still useful. Gmail also caches images, so it's quite hard to make sure that every instance of an open is recorded, because Gmail caches and the image is served from Gmail's cache rather than from the device itself. We now don't see the IP of the recipient, or we don't see multiple opens. And also we found that there are spam filters that look at images, or even more, they follow links to make sure that the content that's in the email passes the criteria that the filters want to use, which is great. Again, great user experience. It stops spam getting into the inbox, but it can mean that we see click-throughs immediately after a message has been sent, but it isn't actually a person following that link. And so you have to start building in great algorithms to spot, does the click happen immediately after the send? Are we seeing the clicks on every link, that sort of thing? So non-human interactions is definitely one of the issues about open and click-through tracking that people in the industry are thinking about and working through at the moment.
So I want to talk a little bit about hygiene. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of keeping your lists clean. One thing to look at is the number of spam complaints you're getting. This is known as a feedback loop and is sent when the customer marks the email as spam. Spam complaints also come in the form of abuse reports that are sent by recipients to the abuse address. There are also aggregate reports that can be set up in Google Post Master Tools. This won't give you the individual reports, but it'll give you a sense, an idea of how many people are complaining. If your spam rate stays below 0.1%, you're in good shape and you're considered a good sender. If your spam rate is higher than that and is around the 0.5%, you need to make adjustments to your sending and your list acquisition practices. If your spam rate is sitting at 1% or higher, you're most likely being blocked at this point and you need to make major adjustments. So other indications of poor list hygiene include spam traps. There are different types of traps and many trap networks. When you monitor your spam trap count, use this as a warning, like a canary in a coal mine, and don't try to find the addresses so that you can remove them from your list. Look at this metric as a signal that you need to revisit your list acquisition methods. Spam traps are used by mailbox providers to identify spammers so they can block the mail. Unfortunately, good senders can end up with spam traps on their list, and these traps can cause your IP address or even your domain to be listed on a block list and affect your sending reputation and your email deliverability. So block lists. Block lists are lists used by mailbox providers, filters, and other open source operators for the intention of identifying spammers. A lot of block lists are driven by spam traps, but there are other key indicators as well. Block lists tend to be automated with an automatic delisting once the issue ceases. But some block lists also have a human component for listings that cannot be automatically delisted. Domains, IP addresses, and URLs can be blocklisted, and not all block lists are equal. For example, if you look at Spamhaus, Spamhaus is used by a lot of small mailbox providers. It's also used by Apple and Gmail, and it's considered really one of the most important block lists of today. Proofpoint is also used by many small mailbox providers and is primarily automated. If you look at Invalument, they've got two major lists, a SIP and a URI block list. And finally, Sorbs. Sorbs is one of those block lists that nowadays does not carry a lot of importance, but is actually still used by some filters and mailbox providers. You can go to the next slide. So finally, there's additional monitoring tools. This page here, it just gives you an idea of places to go for additional monitoring. Each of these tools provide values in a different way. For example, Google Post Master Tools, Mail.ru, and Microsoft SNDS provide reputation information for traffic flowing to their mailboxes. Signal Spam and CSA, which is the Certified Senders Alliance, provides reputation for traffic going into the EU region.
Cool, thank you. So now on to look at inbox placement. One of the challenges with the reporting we have on email is that we know when a message has been accepted by an ISP, but we don't know what happens to it after that. Does it go into the spam folder? If it goes to the inbox, which folder does it go into? Do users put it into the spam folder? and do, perhaps it's even being dropped on the floor by the ISP, although that's happens more rarely now. So there are a number of different research tools which exist to try and help identify what happens after messages are accepted, and they use two main different data sources. There's panel data, recipients who are signed up to share their inbox with companies so that we can look at what messages they're receiving and whether those messages land in the inbox. Or also seed lists, so those are addresses, mailboxes that we can control, and we can sign up for campaigns, or you can send mail to them and we can find out whether or not the messages are going into the inbox. They each have their pros and cons, but combined together give you a set of useful information. And you can use this to identify the performance of specific campaigns in your mail streams, for instance, or to look at particular problem domains. Are you having an issue at Microsoft versus Gmail and Yahoo, for instance? And it's also something that you can use to track over time. You can see how the performance changes. Here's a screenshot from SparkPost's inbox tracker product that just shows you the kind of information you can look at. This is a 30-day view, and you can see that our inbox placement is 83%, not too bad, out of the 11 campaigns that were sent in this time period. We're sending to people who are inactive, so who aren't engaging with the email, but the average read rate is about 36%, so the people who are actually opening the email and spending time on it. And you can see here that, in common with lots of senders, this particular one is having great deliverability almost everywhere except Microsoft. And this is what's causing them their problem. And you can see here the deliverability of the campaigns and the split between the different ISPs. Here we're showing, out of the main ISPs, we're showing how much is going into the inbox and how much is going into spam. And you can see that the problem is basically Hotmail, apart from a dip, Yahoo at the beginning. That orange line, that's Hotmail, that's showing spam folder placement. And here you can look at the sends per hour, how many have we sent, and what is happening for spam, and how are people reading it. This sort of information is really useful. It's only on a sample, and so you're making a kind of statistical extrapolation that says, from this sample, maybe this is happening to my entire list. And given spam filters are more and more personalized these days, so what happens in my Gmail inbox is not going to happen necessarily to the same message from the same sender that you receive, because it'll depend on whether I've interacted with it recently, whether I put it in the promotions, left it in the promotions tab, or dragged it into the primary tab. All of those sorts of things means that for the more and more intelligent filters, like Gmail in particular, you just can't tell that the behavior of one recipient is going to be reflected across everybody. But it's the only kind of data we've got, so it's really useful to have something and to use it as a relative measure to keep track of things. I said that click-through shouldn't be the last data measure that you want to use, and I think it's really important. It's hard, and lots of email marketers don't seem to get access to these stats, but it's really useful to see, if you're sending an email, what happens after the user clicks. This is assuming that your emails are driving traffic to your own websites, but in most cases, that's what commercial emailers are sending. So this is done by adding tracking parameters to the click-through link, so that your web analytics software can identify traffic that was generated by an email. And then you can use that to look what happens after that, both their browsing behavior, but also their purchase tracking. Again, if you're an e-commerce site and you're driving to purchase, but even if you're driving people to read articles or to sign up for something, or whatever you're sending the email to, that's something that you really want to be able to measure, even though it's often very hard to set up. People used to just talk about conversion. I sent this email, how many converted? But now there's much more talk about attribution. How much, when you're say the user, the recipient makes a £100 purchase, how much of that do you attribute to the different marketing channels that generated that? Do you do it entirely based on the fact that the last thing they did was click on an email and go through to that? Or do you say, well, no, actually, I want to attribute some to my Facebook marketing because that was what encouraged people to be ready to click on the link when I saw them, or some to my Google search, whatever. So there are all sorts of complicated models that look at those kind of finding different ways to attribute the detail, but the sale. But the crucial thing is you want to be able to monitor so that you can get some cash figure if you're into purchases, or some other kind of performance indicator that shows how your emails are performing, not just opens and clicks.
So let's talk about creating a positive email experience for your subscribers. You've gotten them to sign up. Now, how are you going to keep them engaged? Let's start with a welcome series. Welcome emails are your chance to make a great first impression. You need to contact your subscriber immediately after they've signed up so they don't forget that they signed up. Tell them that you appreciate them signing up and set expectations early by explaining what type of emails will be sent and how often. Point them to your preference center and let them know they are in control by choosing what they want to hear and how often they want to hear from you. Get them excited about your brand. Let them know how your emails will benefit them and give them an incentive to engage with you. Generate a call to action by driving them to your website or asking for feedback. So using a welcome series may perform better than a single welcome email in both order rate as well as brand awareness. And finally, if you've told people that you're going to email weekly, keep your promise and don't start sending them every day. So here are some examples of subject lines that are used in welcome emails. The subject line is your first communication with the subscriber, so make it inviting so they want to open the email. And adding an incentive doesn't hurt either. There's a lot of benefits for welcome emails. Your welcome email is your chance to build a relationship with your subscriber. They allow you to provide a warm welcome when the subscriber is most interested in hearing about your product or service. Welcome emails give you the opportunity to thank the subscriber for signing up and tell them about your company. Welcome emails typically have a higher read rate than those of regular marketing mail. By sending a welcome email, you increase the credibility of your brand. You help warm up new members faster, and you move them more quickly into the sales funnel. With welcome emails, you have the opportunity to set expectations so the subscriber knows what to expect and is not surprised by your email content. And finally, welcome emails help to build brand loyalty. They're the first step to building a hopefully long-lasting relationship with your subscriber.
One of the other things that's really important about creating a positive email experience is making sure that the content that you send to people is relatable, that it's something that's relevant to them. Some tips for this: it's great to know your audience, not great, it's essential to know your audience. We talked right at the beginning about progressive data, so finding more ways that you can ask people for more information that you can use for segmentation, but without giving them the Spanish Inquisition right at the beginning, and making it clear why it's beneficial to them to give you that information. You know, if you give us your birth date, then we can send you a birthday email, but now you can segment people and you know when their birthday is. You know, perhaps you now know their age. You can use that to enhance what you send. Definitely stick to what your user requests in the preference center. Preference centers are brilliant things to build. It's a great way of avoiding a complete unsubscribe if you can offer the recipient the opportunity to slow down messages or to receive certain types of messages. You know, I want to get offers, but I don't want to get a newsletter or the other way around, whatever. So being able to give people the opportunity to change and customize their own experience, their own email experience, will stop people going for the unsubscribe button. Tracking activity on each email using the metrics that we talk about, that's really important, so that you can keep an eye on which customers are engaging and not engaging, so that you can then start to take those out. So you can avoid your engagement rates, your average engagement rates going down, which is one of the big metrics that ISPs look at. You want to make sure as many of your customers as possible are engaging, and one of the ways to do that is to reduce the number of people receiving the mail who aren't engaging. Also, make sure that the content you're sending is aligned to the people you're sending it to. So, you know, if you've got a wide product range, you don't necessarily want to send information about that whole product range to everybody on your list. Maybe the people who bought shoes might want to know more about shoes and not very much about handbags, whatever. You want to be able to target the content. And you also want to be able to do testing. Talk about in the email, it's talked about A/B testing, but it means any kind of different number of test cells to be able to test different things, so as to try and optimize what you're doing. There's definitely a school of thought that says you shouldn't send an email without testing at least one thing. I think that's a school of thought written by academics rather than by email marketers, because they don't know how hard it is in practice to do. But it definitely is true that just to keep doing the same old thing without finding out whether you could be doing something better is a missed opportunity, given the data we've got. And also make sure you design for mobile. More and more people are viewing emails on mobile devices, whether that's phones or iPads these days, and to have an email that doesn't behave properly, doesn't display properly in mobile is really missing a trick. It's also important to find ways to keep the subscriber engaged, as I said, using data to monitor the engagement, but then giving people the opportunity to either change their frequency, update their preferences, or find ways to win them back, to re-engage. So that, and if you couple what you're sending with email with other things that you're doing through social media, that reinforces those things and reminds people why they should be receiving the email. If you prepare the ground for a special offer, they may be looking out for it in their email. These are all great ways of making sure that you keep your email list responsive, and that doesn't necessarily mean purchasing, but finding ways so that they at least engage with your content. Here are some good examples of preference center emails that you can. This was one from Dell, and here's one from a media company. Great ideas for being able to say, we haven't heard from you, but it would be great if you could tell us more, or opt out if you want to. It's always really good to give an opt-out opportunity, so that you don't run the risk of people hitting the this is spam button rather than opting out, because an opt-out is, yes, you're losing them as a subscriber, but you're not affecting your reputation.
So let's talk about the re-engagement win-back series. What's the difference between the two? There are actually two types of very similar emails. The re-engagement is geared towards subscribers, and the win-back is geared toward customers that have made previous purchases. As you can see, the purpose is the same for both. It's to get the subscriber or customer interested in your email or product again. The process is to re-entice the customer with offers or new content, or to determine whether they need to be removed from your list permanently. Re-engagement win-back emails are typically sent less frequently and are sent in a series over several weeks. This will give you the opportunity to re-engage the customer. If the customer is not re-engaged by the end of the series, they should be removed from your list. So here's an example of one series cadence. And this is just an example. But say your customer has not been engaged for 6 months, meaning they haven't opened or clicked in 6 months. On day 1 of your re-engagement series, you remove them from the main email stream and place them on a re-engagement list. After 1 month, you send them the first email. If the customer re-engages, put them back on your main list. If the customer requests to be unsubscribed, unsubscribe them. If there's no action, wait 1 week and send them a second email. The same action should be taken after the second email is sent. After the third email, if there is no engagement from the customer, this is when you need to remove them permanently from your list. So here's an example of Land's End re-engagement series. The first email, they engage with you, they tell you they miss you, they have several call to actions here. You can see there's an unsubscribe on there. You can see there's a click here to stay on the list. And actually at the bottom, they're also asking you, contact us if you have any questions. The next email they send is similar, but it has different words, a little bit different activity on there just to keep you engaged, but the same call to actions are in place. And then the third and final email is actually the last call, indicating that you will be removed from the list if you don't click to state that you want to continue receiving emails. Looking at this series, you can see that Land's End makes use of consistent but different creatives to keep the emails from getting stale. They each highlight what will be lost if you unsubscribe, and they provide clear instructions on what you need to do to stay on the list. Our next example is Uber. You can see Uber, it's catchy, it's telling you, let's get back up to speed, and there's a clear call to action, which is request a ride. This next email is this sad little boy indicating if you're not signing up, he's going to be unhappy. If you want to continue and stay engaged, click yes. You know, the copy aims to engage the subscriber by getting their attention. And finally, if somebody is not interested and they haven't engaged, and you say that this is the end, then it needs to be the end. You've given them a few times to re-engage. If they don't re-engage, then you need to remove them from your list. Here's a few examples of re-engagement win-back subject lines that you can use when you want to re-engage a customer. Remember, make it eye-catching. Be clear about your intentions, that you want to know if they're still interested in receiving your emails. And finally, entice them with special offers or new content.
Thanks, Tracy. So just to summarize, the really important thing, if I could sum up what I was talking about in measurement in 3 words, it's this: measure what matters. Most of us, we send an email, there's an objective for why we're sending an email. And my belief is that it's important. We don't send emails in order to get them opened, only to get them opened. We don't send emails only to get them clicked. We send emails for some kind of action. And if we're doing that, then we need to measure at that point as close to the eventual action, as close to the objective of the email as possible. Now, I know that it's hard, and that for the reasons I talked about, lots of people, marketers, aren't able to go past the opens and clicks data because that's all they've got access to. But those, and so they've just become proxy metrics. We talk about them and talk about our open rate and our click-through rate, and we monitor that, rather than looking at the important, to me, the important thing of why are we sending the email and why is it, what are we measuring for that? We need to make sure we know the difference between absolute and relative metrics. So hard bounce rate is absolute, you want to investigate straight away, but click-through rate is probably relative, so you want to look at the change over time. And if you are using proxy measurements like opens, make sure that everyone who you give the data to understands the caveats about that data. If they're looking at open rate, are they going to suddenly say, well, you're telling me a 10% open rate, does that really mean 90% of the people aren't opening? That must be terrible, what are we doing wrong? Rather than explaining that actually for a commercial newsletter, 10% is a good rate, and you want to make sure that it's not 10% this week when it was 15% last week, or indeed if it's 10% this week when it was 5% last week. You want to make sure that you understand the relative difference. It's also very important, I think, as an email marketer to kind of set service level objectives for yourself so that you're noticing a sudden increase in hard bounces. We were talking about the level of bounces or spam complaints that signify you being a good sender. You want a system in place that will alert you quickly if your hard bounce rate goes up, so that you can try and track down what the issue is. Have we added a new set of data? Is there a problem at one of the ISPs where our mail's being blocked? Whatever, we need to be able to get to those quickly, and having kind of rates, lines in the sand, so you know what you're trying to achieve at each time is really important. And using seed list or panel data to review your ongoing performance of email is also a really good idea, and so not just relying on delivery stats. And making sure absolutely that you're getting the alerts for the most important block lists, especially Spamhaus. And with that, thank you very much. Hand over to Sarah to see if there are any questions.
Hello, I'm just trying to figure out where my mute button was then. Great, that was really insightful. Thank you to both of you. We've got a couple of questions that have popped through to me. The first one, and I'll let you decide who's going to take it, is how much of an impact has MPP had on open rates for email?
Shall I start that one, Tracy?
Yeah, please do.
It's been significant to the extent that some people have described it as being the death of open rate as a useful metric. I think that is exaggeration, simply because the open rate has always been variable, but the variability has always been consistent, if you see what I mean. So it's been variable because of the issues about images and this kind of stuff, but at least that affected us the same way each time, so we could reliably monitor the relative change. It's definitely increased opens for lots of people. We saw open rates take a big jump, but as long as people realize that that's not suddenly their list is performing better, it's just that MPP changed the rules for opens. I think in SparkPost we added a filter so that you can view the data with or without the opens, prefetched opens included, and there were quite a few customers who suddenly worried that their open weight was dropping when we started removing the prefetched opens. But as long as it's clear what data you're looking at and what it includes, then I still think opens is a useful metric, but not as useful as others further down the funnel.
Tracy, anything to add from you?
No, that really actually covers it really well.
Great. Okay, another question here. It says, it seems like a lot of email marketers only look at opens and clicks. Why do you think it is they stop there when it comes to measuring email?
I guess I can start this and Karen can add. Opens and clicks are one of the top things you see when you send an email. It's easy to measure. The stats are always available. But in reality, there's so much more to opens and clicks that you really need to monitor. You need to monitor the negative impacts as well as the positive impacts, and your negative impacts would be your bounces, your delays, any types of blocks. That's important as well.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sarah, I think the answer to that is that it's hard, and opens and clicks, as you were saying, Tracy, are easy because they're there in your email platform, and so that's what people have got used to seeing. But one of the things I was trying to get across is that if you only look at that those figures, you miss a lot of the picture. And if you're not measuring, the actual impact of your emails, you're only measuring halfway down the funnel, then you're missing out on a lot of information, lots of things that you could use both to justify the marketing and the email program you're doing, if you know exactly how much money it's making and what impact it's making on sales, but also to be able to optimize. If you can see that one message gets you to a landing page and then people don't go any further from there, you can work out, well, we need to optimize the landing page to help move people forward, or should the link be going straight to a product rather than to a category, for instance. Those kinds of things that you can look at and test if you've got the data that looks further beyond opens and clicks.
I think that's a really great answer. I can't see any other questions. Oh no, there's one here. I think you've touched on this quite a lot in your answers, but the last question that we've probably got time for is, what metrics do you think are most important if you were going to really narrow it down, I guess, which again is, I think, quite a difficult one to answer, but over to you too.
Sure. So, I mean, that's a great question, but the real answer is all metrics are important. If you really could only monitor a few, stay at the top of the funnel, look at your delivery rates, your acceptance, your bounce, your opens and clicks. But in reality, if you want a good, successful email campaign, you need to monitor the metrics all the way through to the end. That way you have a good view, a good insight into how well your entire campaign is working through the full funnel.
Yep, I think I can't say any more than that. It's every single point in that funnel is important, and we can't keep concentrating on the top of the funnel, which is essential. You've got to make sure you've got subscribers coming in and that your bounce rates are as low as possible. But you also want to make sure your email is doing the things that you're sending it for.
I've got one more question here, which I do think we've got time for if we can actually. How did you identify the Apple MPP prefetched opens? Was it based on some specific user agent?
Yes, we did a lot of experimentation early on when iOS 15 was introduced, and we realized that the proxy servers that Apple are using a particular user agent string, which we didn't see in very many other places. I think it's mostly only those Apple things. That string doesn't identify Apple in any way, but it seemed to be the best indicator that we had. And Apple then also published a list of the IP addresses of all of their proxy servers. So we were able to overlay that too, and see if it's coming from an IP that Apple says is one of their proxy servers, then, and it uses this particular user agent, then we can reckon that it must be an Apple prefetched open. It's not a science by any means, and we'll have to keep an eye on it in case it changes. Apple aren't going to help us that much because they don't see it as a problem. They see it as a benefit for their users, but that's what we had so far.
Great. Anything to add on that, Tracy?
No, that really covers it well. I mean, this has been a problem for the industry, and everybody's doing their best to try to compensate. But the real answer is look to other metrics, other indicators that you are successful in your sending, and you'll do well.
Great. Okay, I think that's a wrap. If there's any questions that we haven't had time to answer, we will reach out directly. Thank you so much for joining today. Just a reminder, there will be a recording of this sent out in the coming days, so you can watch it back or share with colleagues. And please do feel free to reach out to SparkPost either through our website or myself, Kieran, or Tracy. We're all on LinkedIn, so please do reach out. Thank you very much.